E. Harris, CEO, Bloomberg Philanthropies.
Good morning, everyone. As Mike said earlier, we're here today because we all recognize the power of public health. The Bloomberg American Health Initiative is tackling persistent challenges with greater creativity and resolve than ever, including through the important work the fellows are leading at the community level. These efforts continue across the country full speed ahead, and for all of us on the Bloomberg team, it's an honor to partner with you. 8 years ago, this initiative was born out of collaboration and partnership. So today, I am so pleased to introduce a very special guest who's a longtime collaborator and partner of the team at Bloomberg Philanthropies. In fact, before he became senator, he was a member of our foundation's board of directors, back when he was one of the most dynamic and effective city leaders in the country. As mayor of Newark, New Jersey, he joined Mayor Mike Bloomberg in our National Coalition for Gun Violence Prevention, Mayors Against Illegal Guns. And as senator, he's a member of a key Senate Committee on Agriculture and Nutrition and a strong advocate for one of the focus areas of the Bloomberg American Health Initiative, promoting local food systems' access to nutritious foods. So we're grateful for his leadership. We're very fortunate that he could be here today, and we're so happy to welcome him. Please join me in welcoming to the summit our partner in public health, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker.
You're awesome. Hello, everybody. I cannot tell you how grateful I am to be here today, because I feel this incredible sense of urgency, because like every one of you, I love my country. We are all patriots in this room, and we're dedicating ourselves to the idea that we belong to each other, that we're trying to create a more perfect union. But if that's the case, if we are one nation under God, if we are fighting to put more indivisible back into this one nation under God, if we believe that we still share common cause and common purpose, the number one purpose in our country has got to be correcting the outrageous absurdity that in the United States of America, the most powerful nation in the world, we have some of the worst health outcomes. That we spend more money than any other nation on so-called health care, but it's really disease care. 1 out of every $5 in our economy is being used to treat sickness and illness. 1 out of every 3 government dollars being spent on the federal level. It's absurd. We have to start having a truth-telling time in America. The number one cause of death in our country, not natural disasters, not domestic or international terrorism, the number one cause of death in our country, causing death and disease and suffering, is diet-related diseases. We have a food system in America that is literally killing us. It is our greatest public health threat that we're not talking about. And so here are some truths that should outrage Americans. Number one, we are the leading sprayers of chemicals on our food, well out of proportion to other nations. Think about this. We use over 1 billion pounds of pesticides in the United States each year. This is nearly 20%. We're 4% of the globe's population, but we use 20% of the entire globe's usages of pesticides sprayed on our food. And 1/3 of those pesticides are banned from our peer countries. The massive overuse of toxic pesticides harms not just our environment, but it's a public health threat to us when we consume the foods that are sprayed. And it especially threatens our children, our elderly, and our farm workers. And it's not just pesticides and herbicides. We also allow toxic chemicals to be put in as food additives, dyes, preservatives, emulsifiers, sweeteners, all into our foods. Some of these chemicals we know are linked to cancer rates, which are exploding all over our country. They're linked to hormonal disruptions and other adverse effects to our immune systems, our nervous systems, and attention deficit and hyperactivity to our children. We are allowing this to happen and not seeing any kind of protection in our country to protect those vulnerable people who are suffering. And these chemicals, too, are banned in other countries. And so we look at that alone, but when we realize that these chemicals and the foods available to our population are overwhelmingly ultra-processed, addictive foods that are proliferating in our society. Think about this. Most of our supermarkets, when you walk into it, 71% of the food available is ultra-processed, sugar-filled, addictive foods that were chemically altered to be more addictive and more attractive. 2/3 of the diet of our children and our teenagers are these ultra-processed foods. And some people think, oh, it's bad choices, but in communities like mine where I live, choices. My kids go to a local bodega and see a Twinkie product cheaper than an apple, and the apple is unappealing. In my neighborhood, if you want to get a fast food meal, you need $1. But if you go to get a salad, at a salad store, it's $15, $20, depending on what you put on it. The cheap, easy accessibility of ultra-processed foods reflects our bad decisions and what we allow our government to do. In 1960, approximately 13% of the US population was obese. Today, more than 40% of Americans are obese. More than 70% of Americans are either obese or overweight. Even more shocking, 1/4 of our teenagers, our future, are pre-diabetic or have type 2 diabetes. And obesity is the leading medical reason that 71% of our young people couldn't qualify today for military service. And these diet-related diseases don't just shorten life. Remember the untold human suffering going on in our country of millions. They're damaging the quality of life, our productivity, the very idea of what it means to be American. We organized this country. Our imperfect geniuses that were our founders said that we are here for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Where do you get any one of those inalienable rights? In a food system that drives so much suffering and death, where people are chained to pharmaceutical products to treat the diseases caused by the foods that we subsidize. And every month, we don't talk about it. Every month, diseases like diabetes cause 13,000 new amputations every month in America. Diabetes causes 5,000 new cases of kidney failure in America. Every month, 2,000 new cases of blindness happen in America, in our country. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, you cannot have them in a system designed for people to fail. I believe the main reason we find ourselves here is because we have allowed the majority of our food system to become controlled by a small group, small handful of big multinational companies who prioritize profits over public health. Let's call it like it is. These big food companies carefully formulate and market cheap, ultra-processed foods that are high in calories and have minimal nutritional value, often targeting their advertising of these products to our children. Their standard is not, let's put products out that improve well-being and improve health, that our customers' well-being is our #1 priority. No. They want to shovel as much of these products that they know are unhealthy as much as possible into the public, even though they're clinically proven to make us sick. And then these companies tell us that the only thing we need to do is move more. They say that obesity and diabetes are somewhat an individual moral failing, and that they represent a lack of willpower amongst Americans. I love watching Soul Train when I was a kid and had this most beautiful afro. You watch Soul Train from the time it founded, and that great line, "I would dance now, but my staff would not ever let me come back." You see how thin the people were. In my community, the black community, which has some of the highest rates of obesity and suffering and death. The changes in our agricultural policy over these years has been driving it into neighborhoods like I live in, a predominantly black community. This is violence. It's the #1 killer of Americans and black Americans as well. And them telling us that the problem is us and not them is a lie. It's not a moral failing. The moral strength of this generation isn't worse than my grandparents' generation. It's that the system has changed and it's rigged against Americans. This corporate greed and Americans' government's failures to hold corporations accountable and set standards, that's how we got here. It is a policy failure that has to change. Our dietary guidelines tell us that 50% of our diets should be fruits and vegetables, but less than 10% of our federal funding for agricultural crops goes to farmers growing those healthy foods. That incongruency is not just illogical, it's poisoning us. We should have an alignment between our dietary guidelines and what we support and subsidize, because we're subsidizing sickness and the pharmaceutical industry now. This is a policy failure because the vast majority of our federal agricultural subsidies go to a small handful of crops such as corn and soy, which end up in those cheap ingredients in ultra-processed food. It's a policy failure because for 50 years we've stopped enforcing our antitrust laws, which has not only helped to create our nutrition crisis, it has been a disaster for American farmers. Since the 1970s, we have lost more than 500,000 farms in America. They have higher suicide rates as farmers than we do as the American public. The loss of family farms has destroyed rural America in the sense that it has led to an exodus of residents and jobs, hollowing them out and depopulating them. And for the farmers who managed to hang on, this is the reality for them. 88% of our farm families have second jobs off the farm, and a majority of the income utilized by those families is generated by off-farm income, but they stay on their land. They fight for it. It's been in their families for generations. They love it, but the system is screwing them over. And so where do we go from here? If you know me, you know I'm a prisoner of hope. If you know me, I believe hope is the active conviction that despair will not have the last word. I will not give in to this reality. I will not accept it. It is time for all of us to wake up and to join a larger cause of our country to bring back the ideal of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to bring back that ideal that we share common cause and common purpose, not to fall into the forces tearing us apart, but to stand together to advance public health. I believe that we can do it. It's a hard battle, but American history is a testimony to Americans coming together and achieving impossible things. And the movement's growing, y'all. It's growing. Concerned moms who simply want their kids to eat healthy food, they're joining the movement. Small family farmers who want to stay on the land and produce food that Americans need to eat, they're in this movement. It's being led by workers all over our food system, from the supermarkets to the fields, who know that a healthy food system will help them be more healthy. It's a movement by the people in this room. That's why I was so eager to be in community with y'all today, because it's tough up there on Capitol Hill, but I wanted to be with you. And so I'm going to keep the fighting, but I know we got a growing posse of people just as committed as I am. I'm going to make sure that no matter who's president of the United States, that we push the FDA to use their existing legal authority to ban toxic chemicals from our foods. And enough of this grass loophole, generally accepted as safe. Forget that. New chemicals, before they're introduced in the system, the FDA can require that they are actually tested and proven before they allow them into our foods. I'll be pushing the FDA, the EPA, pesticide office to stop doing the industry's bidding and start standing up for Americans and protect their health. I'm going to push for the Farm Bill, which I know was just talked about, for that drafting process next year to exponentially increase their investments into USDA programs that prioritize independent family farmers who are growing the foods that Americans most want to eat, fruits and vegetables. And I want to be pushing for policies that are going to continue to focus on the resiliency of our local communities. I'm looking for allies, folks. This is a call for patriotism, folks. This is a Fannie Lou Hamer moment. Everyone here should be sick and tired of being sick and tired. We should be sick and tired of being sick. This is a John Lewis moment. Because John Lewis said, do not sit idly by when the cause of your country is in crisis. It's time for all of us to cause some good trouble. It is a moment of truth. Our founders talked about the ideal of our truth will go marching on, but we said it in our founding documents that we hold these truths to be self-evident. A new generation of Americans has to rise up and speak up and stand up that we in this generation will again reclaim the American dream that everyone should have. Access to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you.